on this file. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Housing. A 2019 study found that short-term rentals had removed 740 housing units from HRM's long-term housing market, and I'll table that. However, the Conservatives' plan only commits to consultation with stakeholders in the growing short-term rental industry. Mr. Speaker, will the minister agree to strengthen the regulation of Airbnbs to stop the creation of ghost hotels and prevent the loss of long-term residential units?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak to any Conservative plan. This is the Progressive Conservative government, so I'll decline to speak to that.
The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Touche. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, all of those words previous, however, the Progressive Conservatives plan only... Mr. Speaker, I really appreciate that because I hope the claps happen after I give them the question. However, the Progressive Conservatives plan only commits to consultation with the stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, will the minister agree to strengthen the regulation of Airbnbs to stop the creation of ghost hotels and prevent the loss of long-term residential units?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for that question. And yes, the answer is we have committed to consultations in the coming months with an eye, with the intent of bringing in legislation in the spring. And there's a lot to consult on that. We don't know what's really transpired during Airbnbs during COVID. That's part of it. We know we're entering the post-COVID world, we hope, and that this is all important to address, and it's an important factor in housing. We're very concerned about it. Thank you.
The honourable member for Clare.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Public Works. In 2019, an important initiative was
Shall Clause 4 carry? No, there's an amendment.
There's no point.
Yeah. I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to draw the member's attention to page 2, clause 4. We should all have the paper in front of us? No? I'm going to read it through then. All right then. A, line 1, add the number 5. B, add immediately before line 1 the following subsections. 1, subsection 1, 10A of Chapter 401, as enacted by Chapter 40 of the Acts of 1993, is amended by striking out, except for a fixed-term lease, in the first line. Number 2, Section 10A of Chapter 401, as enacted by Chapter 40 of the Acts of 1993 and amended by Chapter 41 of the Acts of 2018, is further amended by adding immediately after subsection 1 the following subsection. 1A, 3 months before the end of a fixed-term lease, the landlord shall offer in writing a new fixed-term or month-to-month lease to the tenant. Number 3, subsection 10A, 2 of Chapter 401, as enacted by Chapter 40 of the Acts of 1993, is amended by striking out, with the consent of the owner, in the third line. Number 4, Section 10A of Chapter 401, as enacted by Chapter 40 of the Acts of 1993, and amended by Chapter 41 of the Acts of 2018 is further amended by adding immediately after subsection 2 the following subsection. 2A, a fixed-term lease may be terminated upon 3 months written notice if the landlord or the landlord's immediate family is to occupy the residential premises. Mr. Speaker, our caucus agrees that there are many changes needed to the Residential Tenancies Act. There is a clear power imbalance between tenants and landlords, which requires safeguards to address. And we've heard from presenters at Law Amendments about the improvements that could be made to strengthen this bill's ability to address the recommendations 3 and 14 from the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Commission report. Recommendation 3 is to modernize provincial legislation and regulations, particularly related to enhancing renters' protections against evictions due to rent evictions. Recommendation 14 is to enhance renter protections, equitable access, and better functioning conditions for rental housing. Mark Culligan, community legal worker with the Dalhousie Legal Aid Service, spoke to the Law Amendments Committee about the need to address concerns related to fixed-term leases. Fixed-term leases, as the name implies, have a fixed start and a fixed end date. Unlike month-to-month to year-to-year leases, or year-to-year leases, fixed-term leases do not automatically renew and do not provide security of tenure. When a tenant has security of tenure, they can stay in a unit as long as they want unless a landlord has just cause to terminate tenancy. Fixed-term leases do not do this. This lack of security for tenants discourages them from raising issues or concerns or even requesting basic maintenance for the units for fear that the landlord will refuse to renew their lease. There have been a significant increase in the use of fixed-term leases in the last year, and these leases allow the landlord to just terminate a tenancy. Mr. Culligan told the Law Amendments Committee that Dalhousie Legal Aid has heard many of the landlords opening use fixed-term leases as a way to skirt laws that provide protection for tenants. The changes we are bringing forward were discussed at the Residential Tenancies Stakeholder meeting earlier this year. These amendments would mean that at the end of a fixed-term lease, a tenant would be given the option to sign another fixed-term lease or to sign a month-to-month lease. This requires both parties to agree to new terms, rather than leaving the decision of whether to sign a new lease entirely up to the discretion of the landlord. Without these amendments, the increased protections for tenants against rent evictions will be undermined. This is a gap in the current bill that we're hopeful we can address before the bill moves forward, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing this bill forward. To move my amendment.
Are there Clause 1? Shall Clause 1 carry? Carry.